Good evening, Rabbi. We're going to talk tonight about the Parashat Shavua, which is Parashat Bo. So this tells us about the last three makot, the last three plagues that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought upon the Egyptians over there in Mitzrayim. The last three. What were the last three? We're talking about Arbe, right, which is the locusts, and then we had the darkness, Choshech, and then we had Makat Bechorot. These were the last three before they were freed from there, emancipated from Mitzrayim. This is the idea. So, interesting thing about the Arbe, the Gemara asked an interesting question about this Arbe. What is the Arbe? This is the locusts, you know? How they say in Georgian? Locusts?
Those little flies.
Yeah, those little things, yeah. Requiem Magat. Chagavim. Didebe. Okay, whatever. You know, they make those noises, you know? So, the interesting question is like this, right? The Pasuk says regarding this plague that there was never anything like that before, and there'll never be again in history anything like that. What does that mean? So much of them came like this, and they ate everything. You know? They didn't leave nothing over. Everything was eaten up. All the vegetation, all the trees, everything, you know? Nothing was left over. Everything was eaten. This was the biggest makkah, this was the biggest plague of locusts that they ever had in the history of the world. Something unbelievable. But the interesting thing is, right, that afterwards we find, several hundred years later, we find in the book of Yoel, one of the prophets, of the 12 prophets, is called Yoel, Joel. Right? In English we say Joel.
Joel. Okay.
Right? You know, Yoel. Right? Joel.
Okay.
So Joel, right, Yoel, there was also a big makkah also there. There was a big plague of locusts over there as well. Big one. It says over there that this was the biggest one in history. Never was anything like this. So it seems to contradict one the other. You know what I mean? Over here it says this was the biggest one and there'll never be another one like that. It's a prediction. Comes over there, Yoel, and tells you, no, that was the biggest one. Well, wait a second, but you already told me there's not going to be anyone like that. This is the idea, right? This is the question. So how did the Gemara answer this question? Gemara says that it's talking about two different things. You know, when you have always contradiction in the Torah, it's called a stira. That's what we call in Hebrew, right? Stira means contradiction. You know, things which contradict each other. This one says like this one says like that. They have different sources that say different things. So, you know, they always say, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chaim. What does that mean? They're all the words of the living God. You know what I mean? We just have to know how to reconcile the two opinions and put them together in one-to-one picture. This is the idea. So here also the same thing applies. What does that mean? You have to know how to reconcile these two things. On the one hand, this one says this was the biggest, this one says this was the biggest. How do you reconcile? So the answer is like this, right? It says the Gemara that over there in the time of Yoel, the prophet Yoel, this was a makkah of several locusts, several types, several species. You know, that's the idea. Over here, there was only one species. You understand? There are in the brought down in the sages, in the words of the sages, we have several types of species of locusts. Some of them are kosher, by the way. You know, you're allowed to eat them. Did you know that? Yeah. Locust sandwich. How about that, right? Matzah locust sandwich. How about that? Isn't it interesting? Does it tempt the bad palate?
Not only, right?
Right? So what do they do with these arbe? Interesting question, right? Okay, it's kosher, right? How do you eat that? So the truth is, right? So since it's not really a mammal or a bird or or anything like that, it doesn't require shchita. You don't have to go and cut off the neck, with a knife. You can eat it just like as it is. It doesn't require shchita. It's just like an insect kind of a thing, So this is the idea. So interesting thing is that there are several types, and there are several types. Some of them are kosher, some of them are not kosher. They have signs, just like every other animal has simanim. They have signs of kashrut. This one also has signs. Several signs of kashrut. So here in this makkah, in this plague, there was only one type, which is called arbe. This is the type that came. Over there in the type of Yoel, there was different types. So what does that mean? It was bigger. There was this species arbe, there was chasil, there was this and this one, Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, right? All of them together, they came in one shot. This was even a bigger one.
Can I ask you a question? Thank you. How does it say there it was locust? in the Chumash? How does
Here it uses the word arbe, right? Arbe is one type of locust.
Okay.
Right. Over there it's talking about several
And
types.
what word does it use? Locust.
It used several designations.
says
Yeah.
that there were
This one, right? That's the idea. That's the idea, right? So therefore, we have this is how we reconcile the two different things. You should know, by the way, there's also another interesting thing which is said in the Torah. You know what that is? The poskim say, the halakhic authorities, they say, "Lo metim al kushya." A person has to understand that. What does that mean? We shouldn't kill ourselves because of some kind of difficulty. What does that mean? If you have a contradiction in the Torah, one source says like this, one source says like that. So it doesn't mean, just because you have a kushya, you have a contradiction, you can come and say, listen, it seems like somebody's making a mistake over there, so you know what? This must be like, I give up on that. It doesn't seem like it's right. A person shouldn't do that. You know why? Just because you don't have the answer to the question, how the contradiction is reconciled, it doesn't mean that there is no answer. You don't have an answer. But there is an answer to every question. So what does that mean? A person shouldn't give up and say, oh, since I don't have an answer, that's it, I throw it away. When in doubt, throw it out.
Okay.
What throw it out? Well, do you think that the Torah is like that? Just you can throw away anything you feel like? No. Doesn't mean because you don't have an answer, there is no answer. There is an answer. You just don't know it. Maybe one day you'll know the answer, right? As they say, as we talked about before, we say, right, that the whole point of the Yemot HaMashiach, the coming Mashiach in the Olam Haba, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reconcile all these, these discrepancies in the Torah and tell you, this applies over here, this applies over here. It's all really one big picture. You just have to know how to apply. So every contradiction in the Torah, also every machloket as well. What does that mean? You have a dispute between the poskim, the authorities. This rabbi says like this rabbi says like that. This one says it's mutar, this one says it's asur, it's allowed, this one says not allowed. They're all divrei Elohim Chaim. If there's a big rabbi or a big real rabbi, big real chacham, not like this guy. This guy is whatever, right? That's not. I'm talking about big like that. So what we're saying is that if a real chacham comes and says an opinion, that's really based on sources. It's based on, something like that. As I told you before we started the class, a person has to know one thing when it comes to these issues. You have one opinion here, you have one opinion there, contradicts one the other. What's the important thing to know? First of all, as we said, that don't reject it just because you don't know the answer. That's one thing, right? But there's also another thing, which is that a person shouldn't make up things from his mind, as we said before. What does that mean? Don't just say, oh yeah, it must be like this. If you don't have a source for that, don't just make up things. Yeah, I say like that. Where do you have a source for that? Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai warns in his Zohar Kadosh about this. He tells, he warns his Talmidim, his disciples. He tells them, don't make up things you never heard from your rabbi. Don't make up things which don't have a source. It's a very important thing to understand. This is exactly the problem of what you're talking about. This is why you're angry about it. Yeah. You're frustrated. Yeah, exactly. Why should that's the idea. A person is not allowed to make up something which has no source. We spoke about this before a little bit, but just to clarify a little bit, to understand a little bit better, what does that mean? What if you didn't hear any from your rabbi? You cannot say anything from your own mind. Is that what it means?
No.
So what's the how do we understand that? Right? The truth is, the Zohar Kadosh says like this: whatever you didn't hear from your rabbi, don't say that, because it may not be true. How do you know it's true? You have no source for that. You know why? Because in the old days, people didn't learn from books. They learned from they had one rabbi or two rabbis or three rabbis. They learned from that rabbi. Whatever they got from them, that's all they knew. They didn't know anything else. Because the oral Torah was zipi de Torah. It was transmitted orally. There was no books in those times. Today we have books. So the truth is, right, today we have, every book is your rabbi. You open up a book, this is also your rabbi. This one is also your rabbi. If you read that book and you studied that book, that's your rabbi also. So you can quote from a book as well. Doesn't mean you have to learn from only your rabbi. These are also your rabbis. Everybody's, all the sages, all the Chazal, the big Chachamim that were in the history of the world, they're all our rabbis. The Rambam, Maran Bet Yosef, the Gaon Vilna, right? The Chafetz Chaim. These are all our rabbis. These people. Well, who are they? Well, they're not our rabbis. We're learning from their Torah. This is the idea. So a person has to know that when the Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai tells you, don't say something you never learned from your rabbi. What does that mean? That you have no source for that. That's the idea. From anywhere. From any source you don't have. That's the idea. And you're just making it up. This is considered to be a very big sin. You know what they say about this in the Zohar Kadosh? It says over there that a person who does this is going to lose his Olam Haba. He's going to lose a portion in the world to come. Olam Haba, because you're making up things like this, and it's considered to be very, very severe. The Zohar Kadosh says it's like considered to be like you're making a different God. You're trying to change the Torah into something which it's not. Very, very dangerous to do such a thing like that. Very dangerous.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You understand? Very, very severe thing. So a person has to understand this is a very, very serious matter. But there is also something which is close to that, which is allowed to do. What does that mean? It's allowed to do if you know how to do it. If you know how to do it, it's allowed to do. What does that mean? That means that you heard something from your rabbi, you heard something from the sources, you got something from the sources, but what happens is that you build on that and you make something on top of it, something a little bit extra on top of that. That's allowed to do. If you have a source to start from and you want to build on top of that and make something new, this is called a chidush. That you're allowed to do. That's called chidush. But when you have no source and you're just making up something from the sky, skaska, like this guy, what he said, skaska, there's a skaska. There's no Torah like that. I'm sorry, there's no Torah like that.
No.
Yeah.
Meeting Gilokondai, Khartan, Itzakis, 25 paragraph 35 and 38.
No such a thing like that.
It says Goodrich or some kind of...
No such a thing like that.
They're Georgia.
No such a thing like that. This is going very, very far. This is a fantasy world. No, the fantasy world, I'm sorry to tell you. This is Rabbi,
So they have to tell.
Okay, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. I'm just giving you an example, right? Jimmy, don't be a dictator. Let me do my lecture. Thank you. You're trying to tell me do this. Don't tell me what to do.
We understand.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
After all.
I think that you should, chill out. And no, he's not our God. That's not our God. You got the wrong God. I'm sorry.
Wrong God, wrong place.
Yeah, you got it. That's what it is. You have to go to the church for that. That's not for the church. Okay.
The way we're doing, maybe it's time to go to church.
Yeah, maybe. You should try that.
You know what? Maybe that's a good idea.
Good idea. Very good. Have a good night. Have a good night. Have a good night. All the best.
All the best, Rabbi.
Okay, so now getting to what we said, getting back to what we said, there's also another interesting thing which is brought down this week's Parashat. It's okay. Okay, so as we said, this is one of the things that a person has to understand. Another interesting thing we find in the Parsha is that Moshe Rabbeinu, here, it says that he also converted the Erev Rav. What does that mean? There was a mixed multitude of people in Mitzrayim, and what happened was that they wanted to convert to Judaism before the Jews left from Mitzrayim. So what happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu converted them, and he made a mistake by doing that. That's what the Chazal say, right? What does that mean? That these people were not converting L'Shem Shamayim. They were not converting because of the sake of heaven, because they love the Torah, because they love mitzvot. They converted because they were interested in the money and the success of the Jewish people. They wanted to go in there and succeed, get some positions, get some money, make some business, make some profits, all kinds of things like this. This is the idea. This is the reason why they did it. This was the Erev Rav. So what happens is that this Erev Rav always is a problem for the Jewish people, every generation. What does that mean? That even though the Erev Rav in the Midbar, in the desert, they died, right? They died in the desert. So what happens is that nevertheless they do come back in every generation. What does that mean? Every generation, the Erev Rav comes back to the Jewish people. Even in our generation, and every generation from there on until this generation, until the end of time, until Moshe Rabbeinu gets rid of them. Moshe Rabbeinu has to get rid of them. What's the reason why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who converted them mistakenly. What does that mean? He didn't ask Hashem if it was the proper thing to do to convert them. He just did it on his own volition. Why did he want to do it? Because he said, you know what? It's good that people should come into the Shekhinah, to come join the Jewish people, to come to holiness. Right. That's what his intention was. So therefore, what he did was he converted the Erev Rav. But Kadosh Baruch Hu told him the next day, "What did you do? You converted these people? Yeah. You made a big mistake. You made a big mistake, right? That's the idea. What does that mean? That he told them, if you would have consulted with me, I would have told you that these people you should not convert them. What's the reason why? Because these people don't have any tikkun. They cannot be fixed. They cannot be rectified. The neshamot, the souls of these people. Right. Why is that? Because these people were from a bad place. What does that mean? These were the Jewish neshamot, the Jewish souls that came in that generation of the Mitzrayim. Right. They were from the good side, and the Erev Rav was from the bad side. They were from the same neshama, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu separated them, the good and the bad. The Jewish people were the good part of that neshama, and the bad part was the Erev Rav. So therefore, they were the diametrical opposites. So what happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu should have known, if he would have asked Hashem, he would have told them, these people, you can't convert them. You know why? Because they have no tikkun, they have no rectification. You can't fix them. Whatever you try to do to them, they'll never come to tshuva. They'll never do tshuva. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a big mistake, right? And he converted them. So what happened was that now, in the desert, they had to be killed. Why? Because they were the ones who instigated the Avodah Zarah over there, the Egel, that they did Avodah Zarah in the desert over there. Okay. He was the one who instigated, they were the ones who instigated this, the Erev Rav. They are the ones who forced Aaron to make the Egel, to make the Avodah Zarah. They were the ones who did the magic tricks, all kinds of things, that the idol should be built like that. They did it with magic, Kishufik, Jadoebi got it. That's the idea, right? So what happened was that the Erev Rav was killed, but nevertheless, they come back anyway. What does that mean, they come back? They come back as Gilgulim, as reincarnations. Neshama Brundeba, Sure. They come back. Yes. The souls come back all the time. They die, they come back again, they come back again. So what happens is that in every generation, says Zohar Kadosh, they come back again and again, this Erev Rav. So what they do is, they cause the Jewish people to sin. They say, we're Jewish, but they don't live like Jews. So what happens is that the real Jews learn from them bad ways of behaving, bad ways of conducting themselves. That's the idea, So because of that, they cause the Jews to sin, and this is the mistake that Moshe Rabbeinu made by converting them. They caused this situation like that. That's the idea, right? So what happens is that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't realize, as we said, this was going to occur, but in the end, he's going to come back. That's what Zohar Kadosh says. He's going to come back in the time of Mashiach, because he is the Mashiach. Moshe Rabbeinu is really the Neshama of Mashiach. So he will come back, and his job is to destroy the Erev Rav at the end of times. Because if he doesn't destroy them, Mashiach cannot come. Because they hold back the Mashiach. Okay. Until they're destroyed, they cannot come. He cannot come. That's the idea. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu has to fix up this problem that he did by taking the Erev Rav. He has to come back and destroy them. How does he destroy them? He has to take away the nitzotzot of kedusha. What does that mean? He has to take away the sparks of holiness that they have. They have sparks of holiness. You know why? Because they stood on Har Sinai. They received the Torah. So therefore, they got sparks of holiness from that. So Moshe Rabbeinu has to take away those sparks of holiness from them, remove it, and therefore, once the sparks of holiness are removed, how do you do that? That's a big question. How do you do that? He knows how to do it. That's the idea. He knows how to do it, right? So once he takes away the sparks of holiness, this is what's going to be, right? That's the idea. They're gonna be destroyed. But until then, what happens is that the Erev Rav, they come back in every generation. How do they come back? What happens is, says the Zohar Kadosh, Elu b'nei tisha midot. What does that mean? It happens that the parents didn't have the proper relations between the husband and wife. Okay. What does that mean? The wife wasn't going to the mikveh. She wasn't. It's middle. Sure. Family purity, they were not keeping. So what happens is that when they have things like this, that's one of the problems. There's also other problems. It could be that a person raped his wife also. There was all kinds of things like this. Or they had relations when they were drunk. That's right. This also can make a problem. All these kinds of things, when you have bad relations with your wife like this, b'nei tisha midot, there's 9 things like this. But the main one that we have to worry about, probably more than any other, is that when a woman doesn't go to the mikveh. She doesn't go to the mikveh, and she just lives like that with her husband. So what happens is that the children who are born from those unions, they come out to be Erev Rav many times. That's what happens, because they're born with a blemish. This is the idea. Right. So what happens is that those children have a tendency to sin. They don't have a clean soul so much. That's so they always turn out to be more or less, sometimes yes, sometimes no. They turn out to be like sinful people, these people. This is the idea. It's called a ben nidah. Somebody who was born without mikveh, without going to mikveh. His mother doesn't go to mikveh. That's the idea. So what happens is that these kinds of blemishes that people are born with whether it's nidah, whether it's a person who rapes his wife, whether they had relations when they were drunk, or they had relations when man was thinking about a different woman, or the woman was thinking about a different man, all kinds of things like this. There was not a good connection between the husband and wife. All these things, which are described very well in the halakha and the Shulchan Aruch, that a person has to be very careful about that. Not to have relations with his wife under these conditions. If he does so, the neshamot which come out from there are like Erev Rav. So what does that mean? These neshamot are very problematic. This is how they come in. Even though those Erev Rav were killed in the desert, nevertheless, every generation they come in through the bad relations that people have with their spouse, with their wife. That's what happens. So these Erev Rav, they're the ones who try to take the Jewish people away from the Torah, take them away from mitzvot. This is the idea, This is the way it works. So the way to avoid all this, how do we avoid? How do we avoid it? A person has to make sure that when he lives with his wife, he has to have the proper relations, proper concentration, proper deeds. He has to learn these halachot. When a person gets married, they teach him. A rabbi should teach him. Some rabbi should teach him how to live with his wife. They shouldn't make these kinds of mistakes. Shouldn't make these kind of errors. This is the idea. So therefore, what Moshe Rabbeinu did by taking the Erev Rav was a very, very big mistake, and we're paying for it until this day. That's the idea. Okay, let's talk about something else a little bit. Also, we have here the issue of Korban Pesach. What does that mean? That Kadosh Baruch Hu told the Jewish people before they left Mitzrayim that they have to do Korban, bring a Korban Pesach. Okay. What does that mean? They have to take a lamb, right, and keep it for a few days, and then they slaughter it, and they eat the meat, batkan, that's the idea, right? Batkan. Yeah. So these kinds of things, they eat the meat. So why and also they have to take the blood. One of the mitzvot was they have to take the blood from the lamb and put it on the doorpost, the mezuzot of the door, and on the top like this, top lintel, and the side posts, they have to put it on like that. That's what they have to do. So the question was like this, right? Why should they have to do this? So it says in the pasuk that when the destroyer comes, the bechorot, the firstborn of Mitzrayim, were destroyed, were killed by the destroyer that came and destroyed them. So what happened was that every door post which has blood on it, like this, and on the top and on the sides, the destroyer will not come in there. He'll know that this is a Jewish family, and he will not come in to kill the firstborn over there. This is the idea. So the question is, why?
Question is, why it has to be lamps?
I want to talk about that exactly like that. If you can sit down, I'll explain to you. The way is like this, right? That he's asking about why it has to be a lamb. Okay. So the answer is like this, right? Because what was the god of Mitzrayim? The god of Mitzrayim was the lamb. They worship lambs. Just like today they worship cows. How that is, right? In India, how that is, right? They used to worship lambs. This is the idea. By the way, in Mitzrayim they had several gods. They had all kinds of avodah zarah. This avodah zarah, this avodah zarah, this guy. But the main avodah zarah, the main honcho, the main guy was the lamb. That's the idea. That was the main avodah zarah. Why, by the way, should it be that a person should worship a lamb for God's sakes? If they're crazy, what are you crazy? Well, just an animal. It's charia. What do you have? What do you say in this thing to worship it? What kind of thing is this? So Zakadosh says something very deep about that. What it says, right? It says that the reason why the Egyptians worshipped the lamb, they knew that this was connected to them. What do you mean connected? What's the connection? What? There's a romance going on? What's going on? What's the connection? No, the connection is like this, right? That there's also a mazal in the Shemaim, which is like the shape of a lamb. It's called taleh in Hebrew. I don't know how they say this in Georgian. Interesting, right? It has a shape of a lamb. Right. It's a constellation which has a shape of a lamb. In the Shemaim, it's a group of stars. Mazal Libya,
Yeah, oven.
So they knew, the Egyptians, that they were connected to this mazal. In other words, their power comes from this mazal. They were connected to that. Because every nation has some kind of a mazal, some kind of something in heaven that protects them, that guides them, right? So for them, they knew this was their connection. So therefore, this is the reason why they worship the sheep. You know why? Because the truth is that you shouldn't think, by the way, that these are two separate things. What does that mean? When you have the mazal in Shemaim, when you have the lamb, and you have the lambs over here, these two things are connected. What does that mean? How is it connected? So it says the Kadosh, the connection is like this, right? That every animal in this world that we have has also some kind of mazal. So what does that mean? The mazal of this animal is that mazal. They're connected. Everything has a mazal. That's the way it works. So what does that mean? That the lambs are connected to that mazal, and the Egyptians were also connected to that. So therefore, they worshipped it. This is the idea. This is the reason why. They That's the idea. Now the question is, right? Besides that, you have to answer another question. What is what? Why did Kadosh Baruch Hu command them to kill the lambs in front of the Egyptians? This was their God. So the point was that he wanted to humiliate the Egyptians. Tell them your God is nothing, worthless, piece of nothing, piece of meat. To show them that they're worthless. This is the idea.
Delicious piece of meat.
That's the whole point. That's the idea,
Wow.
So therefore,
everything amazing.
Amazing, right.
The Torah explains everything.
Yes,
that's amazing.
So the point is like this, right? That here, when you have this kind of mazal like this, the Egyptians worshipped it, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to demonstrate to them, your God is no God. There's nothing there. You're worshipping something which is worthless, not worth nothing to you. What are you doing? You're making a mockery out of yourself, out of the humanity, worshipping a lamb, for God's sake. It's ridiculous. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu, what he did was, when he attacked the Mitzrayim, the Daitaka, he punished them. He also punished their gods. All their gods he punished, every one of them. Another god that they had, which was what the Nilus, the Nile River, they also worshipped that.
Okay.
They thought it was a god also, this kind of thing. So that also, when the blood came in the Nilus, he also destroyed their god, the Nilus as well. That's what happened. So he attacked all their gods. All their gods were attacked. Kadosh Baruch Hu said, since you attack me, I attack your gods. Since you attack my people, since you subjugate my people, I attack you also. This is the idea. This is the reason why.
Those bloods from the river, their gods' blood?
So they used to worship the Nile, the water, the river.
Right.
That was also their god. It's a Gonat.
Wow.
That's the idea. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu, every one of their gods, he attacked them. To show your gods are no gods. This is the idea,
Yeah.
Why can a person worship, things, these kinds of things? Ridiculous. I mean, you have to, And also, by the way, it says in the sources, it says in the Chazal, this is exactly what he'll do in the end. What does that mean? When he brings Mashiach, he'll also attack the gods that they have now as well. To show them that they're worthless. They're not worth nothing. He'll also attack them like that. That's the idea, to show them. Why do you worship these silly things? What do you get from that?
Right.
There's only one God. That's all there is. Nothing else. All the other ones are just coming to serve God. To serve His purpose, to fulfill His purpose.
Yep.
This is the idea. This is the idea. So a person has to know that this is why Kadosh Baruch Hu attacked their gods. There was also, what happens is that they say that Kadosh Baruch Hu conducted these makot against the Egyptians, just like a nation conducts a war against their enemy. What does that mean? You see everything, right? First he attacked their water supply, the Nile River turned into blood, no water, right? That's what they do. When they make war, they cut off their water supply. They should have nothing to drink. This is the way they conduct the war. Here also, he cut off their food supply by bringing the locusts over there. The locusts ate all the food. There was nothing left over.
That's whatever the Pesach Haggadah says, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. So he attacked their food. He took their food, and then he did all these things in order to take away all their supplies.
Okay.
This is the way that kings make war one against the other. This way, Kadosh Baruch Hu also made war against them. He took away this, he took away that, little by little, right? And then in the end, to show them that they were worthless, he also attacked their gods and destroyed their gods as well. That's the idea, right? This is what happened during the issue of Mitzrayim. But there's also another thing over here, which is that when they did the Korban Pesach, to bring the Korban Pesach, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu? This was the first mitzvah that he gave the Jewish people, to do Korban Pesach, to do the sacrifice, the lamb, this whole thing, right? So the question is, why did he tell them to put the blood over there on the lintel? What he doesn't know, God Hashem, which one is a Jewish family? Like he has to have a sign. So why should he have to put a sign over there? All these things, and to slaughter the lamb, all these things. Why did he give them this mitzvah to do? So the Chazal said there was also another thing, which is that in order that Hashem should be able to remove the Jewish people from the Egyptians, to save them, with dascharas, in order to save them, they had to have a zechut for that. And the problem was they didn't have zechut. What does that mean? That the Egyptians and the Jews were like the same. You know, they look the same. You know why? Because this one does avodah zarah, this one does avodah zarah. They were both doing avodah zarah at that time. They didn't know what they were doing. You know, so what happened was that midat hadin, the measure of justice, you know, would not allow the Jewish people to separate from the Egyptians, because it comes in this justice and says, this is avodah zarah, this is avodah zarah. They're both the same. Why to separate them? Why to save this one and take them out? For what? There's no reason. They're all the same. You know. So in order that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give them a zechut, that they should be able to get out of there and separate, so it gave them a mitzvah to do. You know. So this way, right now comes a measure of justice and says, oh, now these Jews, you know, they have a mitzvah that they do. So they're not like the Egyptians. You know, the Egyptians are all avodah zarah. They're now beginning to serve God. So in order to get out of there, they had to have some kind of zechut. This is the idea, and this is the reason why I gave them the korban pesach. In order they should have a zechut to get out of there. This is the idea. Not because Hashem needed to see the blood on the doorpost and all these kinds of things. Well, he didn't know who was the Jewish family. He didn't know that wasn't the Jewish family. The truth, right, is that the Chazal say even something more than that. They say that even though they had the blood on the doorpost like that, and this was supposed to prevent the destroyer from coming in and destroying the firstborn over there, the Bechor. Right. But nevertheless, if there was an Egyptian over there in that same house, that Egyptian would die. You know, if let's say there was a guest over there, right, or a worker, you know, something like that. The Egyptian who was in the same house would die. So what does that mean? The blood wasn't saving the Egyptian over there. It was only saving the Jews. What does that mean? Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded them to have the zechut, to have one mitzvah that they did, and this mitzvah was saving them. That's the idea. But the Egyptian who was in the same house, he would die. Wow. And also, if there was a Jew in the house of an Egyptian, you know, and there was no blood over there in the doorposts, he would not die, because the destroyer knew that this is a Jew. You know, so this was not really the main issue, right? That's the idea, right? The main issue was that you should be Jewish, right? You should do the commandments of Hashem. This is the reason why I gave them the mitzvah of the korban pesach. In order they should have a zechut to get out of Mitzrayim. That's the idea. Okay, very good. So let's go a little bit now to do a little bit Mishlei. I explain to you some interesting things about Mishlei. This is the wisest of all men, right? Shlomo Melech. He says over here in Perek Yud Bet, Mishlei, he says something interesting. He says, Yodea tzadik nefesh behemto verachameh rasha'im achzari. It says in Pasuk Yud that a person, a tzaddik, he knows the soul of his animal. What does that mean? Let's say a person has an animal, right? Okay. He has some, you know, a dog, or he has a cat, or he has some other kind of animal, you know, that he needs the animal to do something for him. He has some kind of an animal like that. So what's the rule? You know what Halakha says? Halakha says that if you have animal, you must feed them before you eat yourself. Wow. You know, there's a halakha like this. I remember when I was in Israel, there was a rabbi who was to invite me sometimes over for Shabbat. So the interesting was that he had fish, you know, in the aquarium. Okay. He had an aquarium. Yeah. So before we would eat for Shabbat, he would first feed the fish. Wow. You know, because you're not allowed to, even the fish, they're also animals. So you're not allowed to
they have the neshama too.
Right, exactly. They're hungry, you know, so you got to take care of them. Since they belong to you, it's your responsibility to take care of them. If they don't belong to you, that's something else. If they don't belong to you, you're not responsible about it. But if this animal belongs to you, you must feed the animal. You know, make sure that you have mercy on the animal. Don't give it pain. Don't, you know, it's holy. This is also sin. You know, tzar ba'alei chaim. That's the idea, right? So therefore, what happened was that the rabbi used to do like that, right? He would feed the fish before we will start to eat, because that's halakha. Okay. So that's exactly what he's telling you over Shlomo Melech. He's telling you, right, that a tzaddik knows the soul of his animal. What does that mean? He will feed the animal, have mercy, before he feeds himself. Wow. So he's a merciful person. That's the idea, right? Tzaddik has mercy. Rachaman. But, right, rachameh rasha'im achzari. But when it comes to the mercy of the rasha'im, it's very cruel. What does that mean? It's cruel. The idea is like this, right? That if a rasha will do for you something nice, chesed, he'll do it in a way to embarrass you, you know, to disgrace you. What does that mean? He'll give you something to eat. He'll tell you, chama, you know, bedero, you know, chama, you know, like, you know, treat you like in a disrespectful way. That chama, that moketechla, you know, like that, right? That's the idea, you know, tell you in a nasty way. They say, by the way, the same thing also applies. If a person does kibbud avayim, he gives kavod to his parents, right? Let's say, so he brings his father, let's say, a meal, right? Or his mother, you know, to eat something, you know, they're hungry, whatever. Sure. This is kibbud avayim. This is honoring your parents, right? That's the idea. So what happens is that it all depends on how he does it. What does that mean? if he brings the food, he puts it in front of his father, he says, "Eat, old man." Chame bebero. It's not nice to speak like that, right?
Of course.
So they say that if you do like this way, you bring him the food, whatever, you do kavod for him, but you treat him in a nasty way, you lose the mitzvah like that.
Wow.
Because you have to treat them with respect, Not only what you give him, but how you treat him also. Verbally,
Sure.
mentally as well. That's the idea, right? This is
Wow.
So a person has to be careful about that
Right.
to make sure that he does everything the proper way. But the Rasha, what he does is when he has mercy, he's going to be cruel to you. What does that mean? He'll give you something, but he'll give you in a bad way to make you feel bad, to put you down. Dagam siros.
Yeah.
That's the way. That's what they do, Rashaim. They give you, but they say, Some there are also some Rashaim. What they do? When they give you something, they'll give you, but then 1 hour, 2 hours later, he'll tell you something really bad, to insult you, Dagam sirops, Gagap hazoreps. Why they do that? Because they want to also embarrass you, If they give you, they also want to get something, give you something bad also, put you down. That's the idea. So this is the way the Rashaim are. The Rashaim are, even when they're kind, they're cruel, But a tzaddik, he knows how to be kind, even to his animal. Make sure to feed him before he feeds himself. That's the idea, right?
Wow.
That's one thing. Another interesting thing we find in the Mishlei. Oved admato isba lachem umradef rekim chasar lev. So it says, right, that a person who works the ground, let's say he's a farmer, right?
Yeah.
So he works the ground, he'll be filled with bread. What does that mean? That because you work, shomer adaminia, he's a worker.
Yeah.
He's an industrious person. So if he's an industrious person,
Yeah.
he will always have what to eat, because he's not lazy, But there are also another foolish people, who are not like that. What does that mean? Umradef rakim chaser lev. There are people who, instead of doing their labor to do their work, to have a parnasah, to have something to eat, what they do is they hang around with people who are like, musakun richav, Nardisteb, they play nardi, this kind of thing, right? When you hang around people like this who are losers, who don't have what to do, idlers, they have what to do. They're smoking, marijuana, smoking drugs, all kinds of things like this, right? Marijuana, anashebi, this kind of things, right? Weed, this smoking and this doing drugs. They don't do nothing productive in their life, pothead, lazy person.
Yeah.
When you hang around people like that means that you're a fool. You know why? Because instead of working, instead of making parnasah, instead of earning your livelihood, you're hanging around with people like this, right? Wasting time.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
So a person has to know, right? Either if you want to have what to eat, you have to be shomer. You have to be working, hard-working person.
Right.
Don't just sit around and with people who are people who are lazy people, unproductive people. Because all they want to do is just talk, talk. They speak lashon hara, all kinds of things, and then some bad things like this, bad things like that, all kinds of stories, all kinds of things, right? That's how it is, right? So a person has to understand this is the way life is. Okay, very good. Let's do one more. It says like this, right? It says, this is a very good one, very important one. It says derech evil yashar beinav. What does that mean? That the way of the fool, it's straight in his eyes.
Full.
Yeah, fool, steady,
Yeah.
steady, right? So what does that mean? That there are people who are foolish, and they think they know everything, So they think whatever I do, it's always right.
Uh-huh.
I cannot be mistaken, I can do no wrong.
Better to not argue with them.
Right, exactly. That's what they think. So what happens is they always think that they're right. They don't listen to nobody, So what happens is that because of that, sometimes they lose a lot of things. They lose money. They lose, they get into bad situations, all kinds of things like this. You know why? Because they think, oh, my way is always the right way. Well, this is the idea, right? But what does a wise person do? Not like that, right? But a person who's wise, what he does? He listens to people. Takes counsel.
Sure.
A person gives them advice, especially somebody who's older than you, a rabbi or something,
Right.
or some wise person, whatever. So that's the idea, right? That a wise person, what does he do? Always takes, etzot, advice from people,
Advice.
Dari geba, Ari geben, Sari Gibbs. That's the idea, right? So that person like that, he wins out. Why is that? Because he gains wisdom by hearing advice from people. What do you think? Everything you think is the right thing? No, listen to also other people. They may tell you some good idea, something
Sure.
good. You should know, by the way, that this is the way it is with the presidents, with the leaders. Each leader has like 1,000 advisors, everything. Right? They give them advice about every little thing. You know why? Because they need to get new ideas from from other people. They don't know everything. Nobody knows everything.
Of course.
So a person has to be humble enough to know, right, that listen to also other people. You know what they tell you. Don't just think everything you do is right. This is a gava, didgulaba. This is not good to be like that. It's arrogance. That's the idea, right? So a person has to know that. It's also another thing. Another interesting, we'll stop here, right? We'll do another one, we'll stop. So it says like this, right? Evil bayomi vadakaso. So it says like this, right? That the foolish person, his anger will be revealed right away. What does that mean? If a person tells him something, let's say, something which angers him, gabraza, gabraza. He told him some insult or something, told him something really nasty, something really, cruel. So what happens is that right away he gets angry, loses his temper, and he starts to fight with him, starts a big machloket, did a big balagan. That's the idea. But a wise person is not like that. What does that mean? He doesn't react right away. When a person tells him something nasty or something which is foolish, you know what he does? Instead of starting an argument, big fight, he's quiet, just absorbs it, and then, says, you know what? Let me think about that, and I'll answer him tomorrow. You know why? Because tomorrow will be more calm. Doesn't it? So a wise person, what he does is, he doesn't answer right away, to get into a fight like that, machloket, kamatebi, this kind of thing. No. What a wise person does is, sometimes you have to absorb, just hold it in.
Absolutely, yes.
Wait 24 hours, wait a couple of days, and then, think about the best way to answer him, so there won't be a fight, there won't be a big balagan, there won't be a big issue. This is the idea, A wise person always knows how to do that. So, what do you learn from there? Sometimes you have to have patience, Don't answer right away. When a person tells you something,
it means
to make a fight, to make a machloket.
Yes.
No. Think about it for a second, Maybe you'll find a better idea. So that's what a person does, right? When a person is wise, what happens is that he waits, and he doesn't answer right away to insult him back, to insult him back. No, he waits, wait. We'll wait till tomorrow, we'll talk more, this like that. As a person has to have patience. When a person does like that, everything turns out to be really, really much better. But when a person is a foolish, what he does, he answers right away, starts getting into a fight, all of a sudden it becomes like a explosion, That's the idea, right? So a person, if he wants to be wise, has to have sablanut, has to have patience. That's the idea. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen. Thanks for coming. God bless you.
God bless you.
V'nirat.
God bless you.
All the blessings to you and your family.
And
Come back. Come back Thursday. We'll have another class Thursday.
Thursday?
Yes, Thursday. 6
Okay.
o'clock.
Yep, that's good.
All the best.
Yep, all the best too.
Bye.